imagine it's April 2026.
Right.
The Washington establishment is just in an absolute uproar.
Oh, totally.
And the tenure of the top law enforcement officer in the United States has just been ended by, like, a surprisingly boring, superlative-free social media post.
Which is wild in itself.
Right. Well, welcome to today's custom deep dive. We are looking at the sudden collapse of a major cabinet position and the bizarre chain of events that led up to it.
And we've got a really fascinating set of materials for this one.
We really do. To understand how the Department of Justice got turned upside down in such a short period, we've been handed this truly eclectic stack of sources.
Eclectic is a good word for it.
Yeah, I mean, we have dense academic evaluations of the DOJ, detailed political science study guides, and even a transcript from an episode of The Daily.
Which, by the way, that daily transcript really captures the surreal nature of consuming news right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you were reading this intense, granular analysis of institutional collapse and constitutional stress.
Right.
And it is sandwiched right between these jarringly normal, upbeat audio ads for a 5-ingredient, creamy miso pasta.
I know. And then right after that, a promo for a dark true crime pod.
Yes. The one about a family murder-for-hire plot.
Right, called The Idiot. It is entirely surreal to read. It's just a perfect artifact of modern media whiplash.
It really is.
So our mission today is to take all of these disparate materials and synthesize them.
Right.
We want to understand a phenomenon the academic sources are calling the loyalty trap.
Yeah, that's the core of it.
We're going to trace a timeline from a shocking speech at DOJ headquarters through a series of collapsed criminal indictments into this bizarre public relations scandal involving 3 ring binders.
And conservative influencers, right.
Exactly. And finally, we'll look at a broader, incredibly high-stakes restructuring of American federal power.
Well, before we jump into that timeline, just a quick heads up for you listening.
Yeah, a good call.
Our source stack today deals with heavily polarized recent events from the Trump administration. And our goal here isn't to take a political side, play pundit, or endorse any specific worldview.
Right, we are just looking at the documents.
Exactly. We are strictly looking at the structural mechanics of how institutions bend, adapt, and sometimes break, exactly as laid out in the text you provided.
Just reading the blueprints to see how the building behaves under pressure.
Perfectly said.
So, to figure out why the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, was abruptly fired, we have to look at how she completely changed the job description on her very first day.
Yeah, it was a massive shift.
We are looking at a paradigm shift away from decades of established protocol.
And to fully appreciate the magnitude of that shift, you really have to look at the historical context the sources provide regarding the post-Watergate era.
Right, so since the mid-1970s.
Yes. Since then, the Department of Justice operated with what scholars call a veneer of impartiality.
Which was a big deal.
Huge. It wasn't just a polite tradition. It was a necessary institutional defense mechanism. The whole idea was to maintain a deliberate, highly formalized distance from the White House.
Like, attorneys general would routinely decline invitations to high-profile White House events, right?
Exactly. They did that to maintain professional gravitas and insulate the rule of law from even the appearance of partisan interference.
Because perception is everything.
Right. If the public, and more importantly jury pools, believe the president directly controls the DOJ, the entire justice system loses its baseline credibility.
Makes sense. But Pam Bondi's 14-month tenure systematically dismantled that defensive wall.
Almost immediately.
Yeah, the sources point to a pivotal precedent-breaking moment in March 2025. She actually invites the president to DOJ headquarters.
Right.
And she delivers a speech where she proudly brags that she is proud to work at the directive of Donald Trump.
Yeah, she isn't hiding the coordination at all.
She's literally broadcasting it.
Well, by framing herself as a direct subordinate executing orders rather than an independent constitutional officer, she initiated the transition to a new model.
What the academic sources label directed justice.
Exactly. She wasn't just abandoning the veneer of impartiality. She was actively performing bias for the executive branch to prove her political alignment.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of that.
Sure.
This is like hiring a referee for a championship game, right? And before the whistle even blows, the ref gets on the stadium microphone and announces they take their penalty calling orders directly from the head coach of the home team.
That's a great analogy.
But if you explicitly tell the world you are taking presidential directives, doesn't that instantly compromise your ability to actually successfully prosecute anyone in a court of law?
Oh, it absolutely compromises the structural integrity of a prosecution.
Right.
But the sources suggest that legal viability was really a secondary concern here.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. The immediate overriding goal was demonstrating absolute political fealty. The objective was to transform the DOJ from an independent arbiter into an instrument of executive retribution.
So it's about loyalty over law.
Exactly. And to execute that direct-to-justice model, she required a very specific kind of staff, which led to a massive internal disruption.
Right, the hollowing out of the DOJ.
Yeah,
Going back to my analogy, if you want a referee who only listens to one coach, you have to fire all the referees who insist on checking the actual rule book.
that's pretty much what happened.
The administration implemented this retrospective loyalty test that resulted in a wide-scale purge of career civil servants.
From the top down.
Yeah, anyone from high-level prosecutors down to career FBI agents who had participated in investigations into Trump while he was out of office was systematically removed.
And the crucial detail in the texts here is that these agents and prosecutors didn't necessarily volunteer for those prior investigations.
They were just doing their jobs.
Exactly. They were career professionals following routine legal assignments from their department heads.
So they get fired for doing what they were told.
Right. By punishing them for simply doing their jobs, the administration valued absolute loyalty over institutional memory.
Which has massive consequences.
Huge ones. When you purge seasoned expertise, you don't just lose bodies and chairs, you lose the technical manual for the justice system.
Building complex, legally sound federal cases requires immense procedural rigor, doesn't it?
It's incredibly difficult. You need attorneys who know how to navigate grand juries, handle meticulous discovery processes, and ensure a bulletproof chain of custody for evidence.
And removing that expertise created a profound competence deficit.
A massive one.
And that competence deficit became glaringly obvious during what the sources call the retribution campaign.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the list of targets is astonishing. You have Senator Adam Schiff, former FBI Director James Comey, and New York Attorney General Letitia James.
Yeah, very high-profile targets.
And they even went after Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chairman, explicitly as retaliation because he failed to lower interest rates when the administration demanded it.
That one is particularly wild.
And they tried to indict 6 sitting members of Congress, the alleged crime, advising military officials to ignore illegal orders.
Right, but every single one of those prosecution efforts collided violently with the evidentiary standards of the American judicial system.
Because of the competence deficit?
Yeah, you can draft an indictment in an office, but you eventually have to present it to a judge.
I am stuck on how quickly these cases fell apart, though. Like, the text described them as incredibly thin and legally dubious.
They were.
But why did they fail so spectacularly across the board?
The core lesson the texts identify here is what they call the paradox of transparency.
Okay, what does that mean?
Think back to Bondi's March 2025 speech.
The one about taking directives.
Yes, because she proudly, publicly claimed she was operating on presidential directives. Defense attorneys weaponized her own words against her.
Oh, that's smart.
They walked into courtrooms and successfully argued that these were not independent, evidence-based legal inquiries. They were scripted hit pieces mandated by the Oval Office.
Oh, man. So put yourself in that courtroom as a judge or a juror.
Right.
The prosecutor standing in front of you literally bragged on camera that they are settling a political score for their boss.
Exactly.
How can you possibly trust the evidence they are handing you?
You can't.
The transparency of the political animosity became the exact mechanism that provided the targets with procedural immunity.
That's the paradox.
The DOJ essentially handed defense attorneys the keys to get the cases thrown out.
They really did. The directed justice model alerted and activated the very judiciary it was trying to co-opt.
Judges just reflexively rejected the indictments because they failed basic legal scrutiny.
Right, and this created a self-fulfilling cycle of institutional failure.
The White House grew increasingly frustrated.
Extremely frustrated. Because the retribution cases kept collapsing, they started viewing Bondi as ineffective and moving too slowly.
So, because the legal route to retribution is hitting a brick wall in the courts, Bondi desperately needs a public political win to satisfy the Oval Office.
She needs to change the narrative.
She needs to change the news cycle, yeah. And this pressure leads directly to an entirely self-inflicted wound.
The Jeffrey Epstein investigation.
Yes. She goes on Fox News and makes this massive, sweeping promise. She announces that the infamous Epstein client list is sitting right on her desk for review by directive of the president.
Right.
And she says she is going to expose everything.
Which is setting an impossibly high expectation for the administration's political base. She promised them a silver bullet.
The next day, she attempts to deliver on that promise with a highly theatrical stunt at the White House.
The binders.
The binders. She and FBI Director Kash Patel hand out these thick binders prominently labeled the Epstein files. Phase 1.
And who did they hand them to?
A curated group of conservative social media influencers. These influencers walk out of the White House waving these binders for the cameras, fully believing they've just been handed the holy grail of political dirt.
But the immediate blowback was severe.
Because there was nothing in them.
Exactly. As soon as the binders were opened and examined by journalists, it became painfully clear they contained mostly redacted, already public information.
It was pure performative transparency.
Yeah. Even Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff and a longtime political ally of Bondi, went on the record with Vanity Fair.
Stating that Bondi completely whiffed on the delivery.
Completely whiffed. That's a direct quote.
I have to question the internal logic here, though.
Oh, for sure.
Did Bondi really not know the files in those binders were already public knowledge? Or was she just hoping the media and the influencers wouldn't bother to check the contents before hyping it up?
It's hard to say.
It seems like an incredibly reckless, unforced error.
Well, the study guides in the sources point to the dangers of an echo chamber. When an institution purges critical voices and relies solely on loyalists, the internal reality becomes distorted.
So they believe their own hype.
They likely believe the performative stunt itself, the optics of handing out the binders, would override the actual factual content within them.
But it backfired spectacularly.
It did, resulting in a historical rarity in modern politics.
Yeah, she managed to unite a completely fractured Congress against her.
Which is really saying something.
I know. The frustration over the performative stunt, combined with the feeling that the DOJ was stonewalling lawmakers, triggered this powerful bipartisan coalition.
Defying the president's explicit preference to maintain executive control over the narrative.
Right. Republicans, including staunch conservatives like Thomas Massey, joined Democrats to pass the Transparency Act, H.R. 4405.
And this legislation legally forced the Department of Justice to release all unclassified records regarding the matter within 30 days.
It was a massive legislative rebuke.
Huge.
And the outrage over the Epstein files inevitably pulled Bondi in front of Congress to testify.
Which was a disaster.
It really set the stage for her final viral undoing.
Yeah.
The sources detail the February 2026 congressional hearing, and it reads like a masterclass in degraded institutional gravitas.
It was bizarre, defensive theatricality from start to finish.
What were the main failures the texts highlight?
Well, the text highlights several key structural failures during that testimony. First, her cold visual refusal to simply turn around and acknowledge or apologize to the Epstein survivors who were physically sitting right behind her in the hearing room.
Wow. That's rough.
It communicated a profound lack of empathy.
Yeah.
Then she adopted what the text termed the gutter defense.
The gutter defense?
Yeah. Instead of answering procedural questions, she attempted to evade accountability by personally insulting her critics.
Oh, right. Referring to ranking member Jamie Raskin as a washed-up loser lawyer.
Exactly. It's just a complete breakdown of decorum.
But the moment that truly broke the internet was what the sources call the Dow Jones defense.
Oh, that was wild.
Yeah, when lawmakers pressed her hard on the specific legal details of her criminal inquiries, she completely panicked.
She just started shouting.
Yes, she started shouting that the stock market was over 50,000.
It was a total non sequitur.
Like, you are being asked about federal statutes and you start yelling about the Dow Jones?
Right.
It instantly became a viral meme, but more importantly, it proved to every lawmaker in the room that the highest law enforcement officer in the country had completely lost command of her brief.
And the legislative consequence of that display was stunning.
5 Republicans formally joined Democrats.
Yeah, they voted to subpoena their own administration's attorney general to testify under oath behind closed doors.
They completely lost faith in her capacity to govern the agency.
They really did.
Which brings us to the incredibly strange final 48 hours of her tenure.
This part is fascinating.
It is. So on April 1st, Bondi accompanies Trump to the Supreme Court for oral arguments on Trump v. Barbara.
Right, which is a massive historic case aiming to end birthright citizenship.
Right. Sitting there, she looks like the ultimate untouchable insider.
Yeah.
But that exact same day, Trump posts on Truth Social that Bondi is a wonderful person who is doing a good job.
In the lowercase.
Yes. And the very next day, April 2, she is summarily fired.
Well, to decode that sequence of events, We have to look at the academic concept of Trumponology, detailed in the political science sources.
It's so interesting that in a normal corporate job, your boss telling everyone you are doing good work is a compliment.
Yeah, you'd probably ask for a raise.
Right. But according to the political scientists in our sources, in this specific administration, the lack of an exclamation point is basically a pink slip.
Trumpology relies on analyzing the specific, deeply established linguistic markers of this executive branch.
Much like analysts used to study Kremlinology during the Cold War.
That's a really good comparison. This is an administration that communicates almost entirely in all-cap S and hyperbolic superlatives.
Words like great, incredible, or perfect.
Exactly. In that highly specific, inflated context, the absence of high-intensity praise is a severe negative tell.
So describing an embattled cabinet member as doing a good job in standard casing is a definitive public signal of profound dissatisfaction.
True to the linguistic tell, the decision to remove her had already been finalized. The silence before the storm was the lack of exclamation points.
That is wild. But Bondi's fall is wild on its own.
Yeah.
And the texts show it isn't just an isolated incident of a cabinet member falling out of favor.
No, it's a symptom of a much larger systemic restructuring of federal power.
We are looking at the transition from the loyal soldier model to the personal lawyer model.
Right.
After Bondi is ousted, Todd Blanche is appointed as the acting attorney general.
Which is a huge shift.
Yeah, because Bondi was a politician who tried to manage a massive federal agency to do the president's bidding and failed because she couldn't navigate the legal hurdles.
Right. Todd Blanche is a completely different entity.
He literally defended Trump in his New York hush money trial. Yeah.
Exactly. Blanche's elevation signals a fundamental shift in how the administration conceptualizes the DOJ.
How so?
Well, they are moving toward treating the Department of Justice almost as a private law firm, entirely dedicated to executive defense and operationalized retribution.
Wow.
Blanche has already endorsed a much more aggressive operational approach, notably supporting the deployment of federal agents at local voting sites.
So the administration is cutting out the middleman of political appointees and inserting direct legal defenders.
That's exactly what's happening.
But this erosion of institutional independence isn't confined to the DOJ.
No, not at all.
The sources show a chilling parallel playing out simultaneously over at the Pentagon.
Yeah, the timing is really something.
At the exact same time Bondi is being fired, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth forces the immediate, unexpected retirement of the highest-ranking Army official.
Four-star General Randy George.
Yes.
And General George's term was not set to expire until 2027.
So this was a direct, targeted removal.
Yeah, part of a broader systemic purge where Hegseth has systematically replaced nearly the entire Joint Chiefs of Staff since taking office.
The details surrounding the friction between Hegseth and the military brass are startling.
They really are.
I mean, it stems partly from Hegseth blocking standard military promotions, but it escalated over a completely absurd incident.
The helicopter incident.
Yes. Hegseth explicitly overruled the Army chain of command to protect a military aircrew that flew a helicopter over Kid Rock's house in Nashville for a stunt.
It sounds made up, but it's real.
He overrode institutional safety protocols and disciplinary procedures to protect individuals based on cultural and political alignment.
Well, the Kid Rock incident is a perfect microcosm of the broader crisis.
How so?
It illustrates a systemic rejection of career professional standards in favor of personal loyalty. It's mirroring exactly what we saw hollow out the DOJ.
Ah, I see.
But the stakes at the Pentagon are exponentially higher.
Because all of this institutional erosion, this unprecedented purge of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, it's happening while the United States is 5 weeks into an active, escalating conflict with Iran over shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz.
Right. Missiles are literally flying.
And the administration is firing the people who know how to manage a naval conflict because they aren't politically compliant enough.
Which raises the ultimate question about the sustainability of this entire governance model.
It really does.
The administration is demanding immediate, flawless results, whether that is securing criminal convictions in federal court or managing a complex geopolitical conflict in the Middle East.
Right.
But they're simultaneously dismantling the very institutions required to achieve those results.
So if we step back and look at the whole picture provided by these sources, the core lesson of the loyalty trap becomes very clear. Purging an institution to ensure absolute loyalty destroys the exact competence required to achieve the leader's goals.
Exactly.
Pam Bondi tried to substitute performative jurisprudence, Fox News hits, binders full of redacted paper, and public loyalty pledges for actual legal evidence.
And it collapsed the moment it touched a courtroom.
Because the American justice system is an adversarial environment. You cannot simply command a legal victory without the evidentiary rigor to back it up.
Which leaves us with a critical, lingering question to consider.
Let's hear it.
If the loyal soldier model collapsed because the American justice system requires evidence and institutional credibility, not just executive directives,
Right.
what happens when the new personal lawyer model hits those exact same constitutional walls?
That's a great point.
How long can a government function when the vital institutions it relies on are completely hollowed out from the inside?
That is the question we will leave you to ponder today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Keep questioning the architecture around you, and we'll see you next time.